The following is a true story.
Alright, we made it to the big, and we're gonna look for the Boreal Owl first, and American goshawk. We're going to Admiral.
Maybe a pop. We call it the big for two reasons. My phone always autocorrects bog to big. Also, it's actually a very big area. During our early morning travels, we saw a couple of magpies and a tree full of white-winged crossbills. Like the owls, white-winged crossbills are an eruptive species, moving south when cone crops fail in their normal ranges. As I'm sure you noticed, they are messy eaters, hanging upside down like parrots and pilfering spruce cones with their twisted bills. This great gray owl looks like he is sleeping, but I think he is digesting. He had just come up from the ditch when we first saw him, but he quickly gets back to hunting, looking for dessert. They locate prey by sound, so wind can make it harder for them, but they still need to eat. While they are daytime hunters, we usually see them before 8:30. Their stealth technique is more successful in low light when they can silently sneak up on voles. All the northern owls that are here have come for voles. They all employ a similar strategy of patience and stealth. This is the strategy that Lucas and I used to photograph them. Like the crossbill, the smaller redpoll is eruptive, arriving in large flocks, and can hang upside down to feed. The male has a more pronounced red breast, like this guy. The evening grosbeaks do not have a complex song, so when they pair up to mate in mid-spring, they will rely on mutual movements. Right now, they are still visiting feeders in flocks. Deer are also visiting feeders in flocks. We watched a few come to the Sisu feeders to help remove the snow for the finches. Later in the trip, I saw about 30 deer at Mary Lou's feeders. Deer that are fed become more nocturnal and less likely to move far. I blame this for my lack of success hunting the past few seasons. We closed out the morning capturing a photo of the shy boreal chickadee. Its brown cap and buff-colored sides distinguish it. We also spotted one more great gray owl deep in the woods. With still no boreal owl sightings, we decided to wait by the Admiral feeders to see if the pine marten came out. But only these large juncos were foraging. Just kidding, these are Jake turkeys, proudly showing off their beards. Suddenly, a crowd had gathered, pointing their cameras to the woods. Could this be a boreal owl? No, it was more white-winged crossbills. It was getting late. Would this be the first Saturday in a month with no boreal owl sighting? We chose not to think about that. The good lighting allowed us to get our best crossbill photos yet. While they look similar, they are smaller than the pine grosbeak with black wings instead of gray. There was word of a boreal owl, and now we're in a Dukes of Hazzard style race. Apparently it flew, so hopefully they're able to relocate it and have it for us by the time we get here. It was relocated as we arrived, so Lucas jumped out of the car and joined the power walkers. You know you're looking for something small, but you can never get your brain to think small enough. It's much easier to find the birders than it is to find this bird. At 4:50 p.m. on Saturday, February 15th, we were staring at a real live boreal owl. You could tell he was excited too. Like other owls, they regurgitate a pellet once a day. After the owl flew off, a group of students from a nearby college retrieved this prized package of indigestibles. Boreal owls are certainly the most nocturnal of any of this winter's special eruptive visitors. They are usually not hunting during the day. They only come out to sit on the sunny side of the road to warm themselves for the cold night ahead. I believe they also do this for the benefit of photographers. In all seriousness, everyone kept a good distance from the owl, even organizing themselves in rows by lens focal length. As the kids say, the owl was totally chill. The boreal owl has more sexual dimorphism than any owl. To put this in English, the female is much larger than the male. Since I have no point of comparison, I'm calling this one a he. He did appear larger once I put the teleconverter on the camera. After 20 minutes, he flew into the woods. I suspected he would come back to the road to perch for night hunting, so I kept watching as I turned the car around. I actually spotted him with my own eyes with no assistance. Normally, spotting a small owl involves someone physically pointing your head in the right direction, and then you are still like, why can't I see it? 10 feet off the ground, right outside my window, he was kind enough to pose for a few more photos.
Hey, we just saw the boreal owl for the first time in our lives. It was incredible. There was like 600 billion people there, and we got a lot of great photos, and so now we're gonna go party with some. Out for another day of burning at the Sax Zim Bog. Just had to fill up with some gas.
Sunday, we went straight for the mammals, starting with the snowshoe hare. Our first stop was Augie's Boardwalk, where we immediately spotted a pair of hares. The population of the snowshoe hare is much less stable than the more common eastern cottontail, which is often in our yard, and one time in our garage. Their population rises and falls in 10-year cycles, which mirrors their main predator, the lynx. I like watching them raise up on their back legs to help them see and hear better. Their snowshoes actually work. The snow was deep in the woods, and they moved about right on top. Next, we drove to the Admiral Feeders to once again look for the pine marten. And he was there. Over the last 2 years, I've been to this feeder a dozen times, often waiting an hour for this member of the weasel family. I was told just the day before that you have to be willing to wait 3 hours if you want to see him. Most wildlife photographers have an inhuman level of patience and do not show signs of being vulnerable to normal emotions like disappointment. Since I am not that way, I needed this guy to match my schedule. This day, he did. You will never guess what pine martens eat. Yup, primarily voles. What an important member of the bog ecosystem. Today, the pine marten was after peanuts. He would cautiously approach the feeding station and grab a single peanut before retreating. He made about 5 30-second appearances. He was also smaller than I expected. He was truly weasel-sized. I've seen pine marten in the Bighorn Mountains, and I was sure they were bigger. I forgot how much they like climbing trees. They can shoot up a tree faster than a camera can pan up. Someone posted a great gray hunting at the feeders nearby, but when we arrived, there was only a gray jay. Like the grouse, this bird was puffed up to deal with the below zero temps. Speaking of below zero temps, a train hauling taconite pellets through the bog was making its own clouds. Taconite pellets are loaded on the cars right out of the kiln. When these hot pellets come in contact with the cooler air, the little moisture in the air rapidly evaporates, creating steam around the train. It was so cold that we switched to the technique of setting the tripod just outside the car window and waiting for the boreal chickadee. We were able to capture some better quality photos of the evening grosbeaks when we were alerted that the great gray had returned to the feeders where we had just missed him before. I don't think the great gray is there to get a bird. I think he wants the voles that the seeds also bring in. With an explosion of snow and Arctic sunshine, he flew away. The black-capped chickadee will live another day.
All right, we're taking a break from the bog and heading down to 18-5 for the hawk owl.
As we headed along the Mississippi River, we spotted ruffed grouse and northbound flocks of snow buntings.
Just arrived at the hawk owl destination. He's out there, sitting all perched up.
Northern hawk owl, just chilling in the wind. Like other owls, the northern hawk owl has zygodactyl feet, meaning 2 toes point forward and 2 toes point backwards, giving an incredibly strong grip on a tiny branch. I appreciate that it prefers the very top of a tree for hunting because it makes it very easy to spot. The hawk owl wants the high vantage point because it can spot a vole from half a mile away. Their great vision means they prefer open areas. They are daytime hunters, but don't be fooled into thinking you are going to see some action. They can sit on a perch for hours, leaning forward and making you think they are about to pounce. Like the Boreal Owl, they have false eye pattern on the back of their head. This would let its few predators like the great horned owl, goshawk, or golden eagle know, I'm always watching. Lucas had seen a flight shot in the bathroom of the Welcome Center and really wanted to capture the same thing. We watched intently. Usually an owl will fly immediately after pooping, but after 3 poops, still no movement. Finally, after about an hour of some intense shape-shifting from tall and skinny to fat and puffy, we were just moving the camera to get better lighting. It flew. We missed it. It landed on a nearby power pole and went back to hunting. Our patience had ran out, so we headed back to the bog. On the way back, I noticed a couple grouse fly up from the road. With their gizzard full of gravel, they were ready to grind up these delicious aspen buds. They can eat up to 47 buds per minute. It will take this guy about 15 minutes to fill his crop. Back at the bog, the only sighting had been a northern hawk owl. What? We just drove an hour to see one. We were almost relieved that this one kept its distance. We closed the day by heading to Mary Lou's to watch the deer.
Well, we're on our last day of birding in northern Minnesota, and we have one more species we want to see. We're heading over to Aiken to see the sharp-tailed grouse do their dances. And then maybe we'll head back and get the hawk owl again.
We set out at first light, and I had just mentioned to Lucas that this was a great time of day to watch for great grays, when he said, "There's one now." He was clearly hunting, and decided to show off just how small of a branch he could land on. When we got to the sharp-tailed grouse lek, there was no dancing to be seen. I thought maybe they would have a 2-hour late start due to 35 below wind chill, but it seemed like all activities were canceled. After getting some photos of horned lark, snow buntings, and a northern shrike, who hunt just like the hawk owl, only on a smaller twig, some ladies leading a birding tour helped us to find the grouse. They were very far away, and they were immediately scared by some raptor. There was at least 15 sharptails. We decided to head back to the hawk owl for one more attempt at a flight shot. Along the way, there were several flocks of snow buntings hanging out in the patches of bare ground for foraging and grit for digesting. The northern hawk owl was back on the same perch as the day before. We set up the camera and the tripod with the remote because we knew our fingers would not be able to work the shutter. After about 30 minutes, an amazing thing happened. He flew to a hollow tree right in front of me. I pointed the camera as Lucas spammed the remote. I could tell by his wing fluttering he was catching something. Sure enough, when he turned his head, there was a juicy vole. He didn't even have to go to the ground to catch one. It was way up in a tree. He constantly kept one eye watching as he transferred to his talons and flew off to his eating spot. He made quick work of the meal and then sat in a low perch, looking satisfied. Lucas and I were also satisfied, so we set out for home. We were graced with one more bird, a rooster pheasant hanging out on the roadside. When it's way below zero, it's hard to beat roadside birding. Thanks for coming along with us on this Aurora Borealis.